The birthplace of civilization is waiting to begin a new renaissance. We pray this special gathering may someday be remembered as the beginning of peace in the Middle East.
To many people, Jerusalem is the place where modern history began, where their faith began. It's a place of huge inspiration, and it's been a place of conflict. That dome of the rock is really the story of Abraham. It's where God tested Abraham, and Abraham passed the test, and God promised that he'd become the father of many nations. The many nations were divided through his two children, Isaac and Ishmael. They were great rivals, to the point where Ishmael was banished from Abraham's house. But they reconciled when Abraham died. They buried their father together in the tomb of the patriarchs. And the lesson from that is that Jews and Muslims, Christians and Muslims, are not eternal rivals or eternal enemies. The Bible tells us that they can reconcile. And so the Abraham Accords is the story of ancient peoples revitalizing their reconciliation after 4,000 years. This happened in a way that was very different than all the other previous peace efforts in the Middle East, except perhaps for one common factor. It began without people believing that there was ever much hope.
President Trump is expected to unveil his long-awaited Middle East peace plan. However, skepticism remains extremely high. This comes as President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu both face political turmoil.
So, I mean, you worked in the White House. You know,
West Wing.
You were in the West Wing. In the first couple of years, I mean, the number of leaks coming out of the White House.
Working in the Trump administration, we had our backs up against the wall. For whatever reason, nobody thought that we would be able to accomplish much of anything. We knew that people would say, what do these guys know? They don't come from this world. Look, you've got Jared Kushner, David Friedman, Avi Berkowitz. You know, it's
three Orthodox Jews.
Jews.
To me, that doesn't sound like a good start.
I came into this having observed really the ups and downs of working in an administration, because it's very difficult. It's highly contentious. People are always expecting you to fail. People were starting to give up. You know, when you talk about Middle East peace, people refer to it as the example of impossible things.
A critical breakthrough first came in 1977.
We are privileged to witness tonight a significant achievement in the cause of peace, an achievement none thought possible a year ago.
The anger between Arabs and Israelis, which was kept in check yesterday, clothed in firm but mostly polite language, came right out into the open today.
Yasser Arafat extended his hand to Yitzhak Rabin, and after a moment, Rabin took it.
Since 1994, there has not been a peace deal between Israel and an Arab country.
Such were the relations between Israel and Jordan during the last 47 years, a desert.
Since 1994. I was 6 years old.
War made it dead. Peace will make it alive. I hope what has happened today will go on, will walk on, will march on, until the whole Middle East will be a region of peace, of promise and prosperity.
There will be no Middle East peace agreement this time.
The biggest stumbling block was how to divide Jerusalem. And in the end, that is what doomed the talks.
Even when there were peace deals between Israel and other countries, the relationship was a cold peace. It wasn't thriving.
this be a seismic shift of US policy? What does Netanyahu hope to gain out of this meeting?
A rare visit to the White House by Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas.
I believe that the issue of the settlements is not the core of the conflict, nor does it really drive the conflict.
Our fundamental problem is with the occupation and settlements.
Over time, positions on paths forward have become hardened. There are segments of the international community that believe that Israel should compromise in ways that we fundamentally disagree with, from a security standpoint, from a relationship standpoint, from an economic standpoint.
The first draft was probably done within the first 6 months of the Trump administration.
And I give Jason Greenblatt a lot of credit for that. It was on his computer.
It was on his computer.
Which, by the way, I inherited when he left, so then it was on my computer.
Well, it was never on mine.
And by the way, our team had 2-star generals. It had officials in the National Security Council. This is a serious team.
I learned in Washington, it's very rare that there's a straight line between 2 points, and problem solving is about pushing something forward, and nobody truly knows what the reaction's going to be until you do something. So, one of the things that, I said to the team, yourself included in the beginning, was that this problem is like a big concrete wall. And the president basically has told us he wants us to try to break through the wall. And so, I don't know, maybe it's a concrete wall, everyone says it's a concrete wall. Maybe it's atrophied, maybe it's actually a paper mache wall. We don't know, but what we have to do is go and hit it, and we've got to hit it with everything we've got.
The stage was set back in May of 2017 when President Trump went to Saudi Arabia.
I would like to thank King Solomon for his extraordinary words and the magnificent kingdom of Saudi Arabia for hosting today's summit. In my inaugural address to the American people, I pledge to strengthen America's oldest friendships and to build new partnerships in pursuit of peace. I also promise that America will not seek to impose our way of life on others, but to outstretch our hands in the spirit of cooperation and trust. That is why I chose to make my first foreign visit a trip to the heart of the Muslim world, to the nation that serves as custodian of the 2 holiest sites in the Islamic faith.
So that moment was a real reset. If you go back in history to the 2016 campaign, radical Islamic extremism was a very controversial topic, but a very big topic. So at the time, you had ISIS beheading American journalists, killing Christians. They had a territorial caliphate the size of Ohio that they controlled, and they were planning terror acts from that area. Libya was basically a mess. Egypt almost became a mess. You had Syria was in a civil war, 500,000 people were killed. Yemen became destabilized as well.
We are here to offer partnership based on shared interests and values to pursue a better future for all of us. Few nations have been spared the violent reach of terrorism. But in sheer numbers, the deadliest toll has been exacted on the innocent people of Arab, Muslim, and Middle Eastern nations. Some estimates hold that more than 95% of the victims of terrorism are themselves Muslim. We now face a humanitarian and security disaster in this region that is spreading across the planet. No description of the suffering and depravity can begin to capture its full measure. The true toll of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, Hamas, and so many others must be counted not only in the number of dead, it also must be counted in generations of vanished dreams.
On that trip, President Trump in the speech laid out 4 objectives, and he did it in Saudi Arabia, which is the custodian of the 2 holiest sites in Islam, the leader of the Islamic world, and he assembled leaders from the 54 Arab and Muslim countries to come hear the speech. And he said, this isn't America's problem, this is all of our problem. We have to work on these 4 priorities together. Number 1 is Iran.
From Lebanon to Iraq to Yemen, Iran funds arms and trains terrorists, militias, and other extremist groups that spread destruction and chaos across the region. For decades, Iran has fueled the fires of sectarian conflict and terror. It is a government that speaks openly of mass murder, vowing the destruction of Israel, death to America, and ruin for many leaders and nations in this very room.
Number 2 is ISIS, right? We have this prevalent cancer that's been expanding. We need to all come together and eliminate it and then figure out how it doesn't come back again. Number 3 was Islamic extremism, where it basically was saying, you know, we have to change the way we deal with these extremists. We can't be tolerating the terror financing. We can't be tolerating the spread of the ideology.
But above all, we must be united in pursuing the one goal that transcends every other consideration. That goal is to meet history's great test, to conquer extremism.
The final pillar, the 4th pillar, was really talking about the Israeli-Arab conflict and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We need to create new boundaries based on opportunities in the future, not be stuck in conflicts of the past, and we need to build new bridges. He saw this as a great threat to Israel, to the entire world, to the stability of the global economy.
The potential of this region has never, ever been greater. 65% of its population is under the age of 30. Like all young men and women, they seek great futures to build, great national projects to join, and a place for their families to call home. This region should not be a place from which refugees flee, but to which newcomers flock. The birthplace of civilization is waiting to begin a new renaissance. We pray this special gathering may someday be remembered as the beginning of peace in the Middle East.
After that, the president took a direct flight from Riyadh.
It was explained to President Trump that you have to stop in Jordan because Saudi and Israel don't have relations. President Trump says, I have to make a technical stop because those guys don't talk to each other? Didn't I just meet with the king? And it became the first official direct flight from Saudi to Israel.
Distinguished guests, Air Force One has just landed in Israel.
This was a historic flight.
You just flew from Riyadh to Tel Aviv. I hope that one day an Israeli prime minister will be able to fly from Tel Aviv to Riyadh.
And then after that, we went to visit the Pope at the Vatican in Rome. And it really was a symbol of how the president's goal was to bring together the Abrahamic faiths and to stop a lot of the divisions and the divides that had occurred that caused so much needless destruction.
Thank you for joining us as we provide a spiritual insight of what God is doing in Israel and in the Middle East. If you want to learn more about what God is doing in Israel, make sure to visit us on our webpage and follow us on social media. Shalom, and God bless you from Jerusalem.